Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. I'm Jeff Lundy, any pronoun will do. Stephanie Maslanka, she, they pronouns work for her. And I will be your worship associates this morning, assisting Joe Jenks as he leads our service. Wherever you are on your journey of finding truth and meaning, whether you arrive joyous or with a heavy heart, we are grateful that you have chosen to be here this morning. If you are visiting us for the first time, we offer you an especially warm welcome. We hope that all will stay after the service for a time of conversation and connection. Conversations can happen on Zoom, here in the hall, or out back in the garden.
And now we settle in more deeply for our service.
These chalice lighting words.
Martin Luther King Jr. One of the great liabilities of history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through periods of great social change. Every society has its protectors of the status quo and its fraternities of the indifferent, who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. Today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. I would love to invite any of our young or young at heart to come into the center of the circle. I was invited many years ago to go into a school in East Wenatchee, Washington, out in Washington State, way out on the West Coast. And the question was, is music truly a universal language? And I was asked to work with students for whom English was not their first language, but to see if we could write a song together that would help them express their experience of the world. And I kept asking them through their teacher, who was interpreting between us, I would say, what do you want to write about? And they would talk about, oh, boys, girls, flowers, cars, like really innocuous things. One kid said pizza. I was like, all right, I could get behind that. I've never heard a pizza ballad, but we could probably pull it off, And finally, one young woman, Perla, says, ¿A dónde pertenezco? Where do I belong? Where is my place? All of a sudden, I knew what we were going to write about, because I watched the ripple of energy move through the room with the other students, because she had dared to speak the truth that nobody else was willing to speak. As first-year English students, as freshmen in high school, many of them newly arrived in a new country, they were not only feeling a little outcast by society at large, but even within their own peer group, the many immigrants who had come that had learned English better than they had. They were a little bit distant. And I think it's hard to enter high school. It's hard to enter a new school at any time. I think these are times in our lives when we feel especially vulnerable. It's hard to enter a new grade sometimes, and I'm guessing most of you just started a new grade this year. If you didn't, I'm real sorry about that, but I'm sure you still have things to learn. I feel like some of us do that with the idea of reincarnation. Oh, I'm gonna go back and redo that one over again. Didn't quite get there. But it was my pleasure to spend time with them and receive their ideas. Where do I belong? So the translation is the work of the students that I was working with. Any errors can be attributed either to them being learners, but I have preserved it as it was, or me mispronouncing Spanish, which is not a language I speak fluently. But these are their words in English and in Spanish. And my thought is that you might identify a little bit with it. I know that I do. I identify quite a bit with this song some days. It's called A Donde Pertenezco. donde pertenezco? Where do I come from? De donde vengo? Where will I go from here? ¿Para dónde iré? De aquí, de aquí. I don't have anywhere to stay. Tengo donde quedarme. Going from town to town, yendo a pueblo, to look for a better life, para buscar una vida mejor, vida mejor. We are looking for communities, buscando comunidades with better opportunities, con mejores oportunidades. Who have we left behind? ¿A quienes hemos dejado atrás? Dejado atrás. I'm going to go back and sing that first verse again. Feel free to sing it with me if you want. Where do I belong? Where do I belong? ¿A dónde pertenezco? Where do I come from? Where do I come from? De donde vengo? Where will I go from here? Where will I go from here? ¿Para dónde iré? De aquí, de aquí. De from here? That is the question. And in the immediate, the answer to that is no, you're going off to religious education. But in the long run, it's a big question, and we all ask that. And just as a sign of the adults in this space witnessing our young and young at heart, please offer your applause and let them know that you see them and witness them going through transitions.
As we settle into our space more deeply, you can try to feel yourself relax more deeply with each breath. Let your focus soften on the chalice or gently close your eyes. We offer these words, A Prayer for Hope by Reverend Christian C. Green, Assistant Minister for Congregational Life at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Fairfax in Oakton, Virginia. Spirit of love and truth, help us to feel you in our breathing in and breathing out. Quiet our minds, even if only for a moment. Still our bodies, if only for a moment. Soothe our souls in this holy moment. When uncertainty pervades, give us rest from worry. When fear rises, give us peace. When pain surfaces, give us balm. Some of our spirits are so weary. Some of our bodies feel fried. Some of our minds feel frantic and uneasy. How long will this last? We ask in desperation. Spirit of life-giving love, remind us of the cycles of life so that we might turn toward the dawn, turn toward the thaw, and turn toward the rebirth of spring with new hope. Make that hope alive in us, Holy One. Ignite that hope so it burns brighter than our fears. And may that bright hope shine for others to witness, that our faith might be a beacon and our love a lamp to light the way. O luminous Spirit, fill us with gratitude as we turn toward one another in the human family, never alone on our journeys, always reminded of a greater love that holds all. Blessed be. May it be so. Amen.
These words from Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State. I have spent a lifetime looking for remedies to all manner of life's problems, personal, social, political, global. I am deeply suspicious of those who offer simple solutions and statements of absolute certainty, or who claim full possession of the truth. Yet I have grown equally skeptical of those who suggest that all is too nuanced and complex for us to learn any lessons, that there are so many sides to everything that we can pursue knowledge every day of our lives and still know nothing for sure. I believe we can recognize truth when we see it, just not at first, and not without ever relenting in our efforts to learn more. This is because the good we seek, the good we hope for, comes not as some final reward, but as the hidden companion to our quest. It is not what we find, but the reason we cannot stop looking and striving that tells us why we are here. My name is Joe Jenks. I'm a touring musician and performing songwriter. I did a brief stint at Meadville Lombard, the UU Seminary in Chicago. I believe I was suffering after almost 15 years on the road, the illusion that the administrative side of ministry would be any more appealing to me than the administrative side of the music industry. I decided the devil you know. But I'm pleased to say that even as a young person who grew up in the Catholic Church feeling a call to ministry, the Unitarian Universalist communities across the US and Canada, Ireland, and around the world have given me the opportunity to engage in ministry in my own way. My work as a musician and as someone who shares ideas and thoughts and invites you to have your own is blessedly recognized in this tradition as ministry. I struggled as a young person feeling called to ministry and recognizing that I could not answer that call within that institution. And yet I remained good friends with many of the clergy and the nuns that taught at schools I attended, dedicated professionals and educators devoted to the well-being of young people, many of them far further to the left than the institutions that they serve. I thought this was the norm, and then I entered the wider world and realized that I happened to grow up in a very liberal bubble of that particular church. And the first time I walked into a Unitarian Universalist church, I thought it was dry as toast with no butter. I was in college and getting social science lectures all week long, and I walked into a Unitarian congregation in Decatur, Illinois, hoping that it would bridge the gap between my religious upbringing and my girlfriend's complete lack of religious upbringing. And neither of us were pleased with the experience, and that chased me away from the Unitarians for a good while, not realizing that there is extraordinary diversity within this community, that every congregation is unique unto itself. And so if this congregation speaks to you, you are welcome. Even if it doesn't speak to you, you're welcome. You may find that one week to another it's different. But you may also find at some point in your life, as you move, as you travel, as you have occasion to explore, you may too have the opportunity to witness the extraordinary diversity that comprises the Unitarian Universalist communities. For my part, I'm pleased that a guy with a degree in singing is welcome to preach in this context. And I'm pleased to be here with you. In the summer of 2010, I had an extraordinary experience. I was invited by the U.S. State Department to participate in a program that they referred to as cultural ambassadors. And I spent 2 weeks touring the Caribbean, visiting 5 island nations, and giving concerts and doing work with young people and speaking with adult communities and going to state events and dinners. And it was remarkable. I did not realize at the time that the State Department harbors some of the most progressive people in the U.S. government. That was interesting to learn. I will also say that I met harder working people than I have ever met in my life. These are people who normally start their day at 4 a.m. This is problematic for me because I normally end mine somewhere between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. So I was pretty radically sleep deprived by the end of the tour, but I had some amazing experiences. On the first day that I was in Antigua Barbuda, I was doing a radio interview in the afternoon, and then I had a performance that evening for the Queen's Regent. Nations that are still members of the Commonwealth have a representative of the Crown. And they are referred to as the King or the Queen's Regent. And at the time, I met the Queen's Regent, and I had been trained in protocol. When you greet the Queen's Regent, you are to address her as if you were addressing the Crown itself. You do not approach unless invited. You do not offer a hand unless one is extended to you. You bow gently. You never embrace the Regent. No. You back several steps away before you turn and walk in another direction. The protocol was very important. And for a lot of the island nations in the Caribbean that have, within our lifetime, achieved independence, these protocols matter to them. The pomp and circumstance, the ceremony, the ritual of it, it is one of acknowledging dignity and sovereignty, that they are respected enough to have a representative of the Crown there who is, in some ways, a figurehead, but a recognition that they are part of a broader commonwealth of nations, and that they are seen as an independent nation within that commonwealth. It is a point of great pride. So I did my best to absorb these protocols that I might not make any mistakes. And there I am on stage in a room about half the size of this one, that's their great civic theater in that town. And the sound system wasn't working. I was running my voice and guitar through a bass amp, which is not optimal. If any of you are players, you know that's not really ideal. And I had to wear a suit and tie the entire time because I was representing the U.S., all of you, all of everybody. I had a little U.S. flag on my lapel, and I was a representative of this nation. The only suit I have, while being lightweight, is wool. This was in July. Did my best, but eventually I was about to keel over on stage, and I still had the vest on, but I very discreetly took the jacket off and set it over the amplifier, which may have helped the sound, I don't know. And I kept going. And I started singing songs. I had been invited specifically to sing American folk songs, work songs, songs from our civil rights movement, as well as my own music. And I asked the representative of the State Department that I was working with why these songs. And he said, "You have no idea how significant the U.S. civil rights movement has been on the Caribbean. The fact that these nations reached for independence was in part because of movements in the United States where people who were experiencing oppression were reaching in a multitude of ways for liberation. The American Indian movement, the Civil Rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, and then other iterations of the women's movements. These movements from the United States had a huge impact on the Caribbean. He said, this is important in our dialogue to use every cultural avenue we have to remain in conversation. And this seems like a good time to bring a folk singer here. So I started playing, and the Queen's Regent with her honor guard, she was in her, I would guess, mid to late 70s. He was 65 if he was a day, and wearing his full dress military uniform with the brocades and all the medals, and very stiff man, very formal. But it was his honor to accompany her and be her bodyguard and her person in all public affairs. And the Queen's Regent starts moving back and forth as I'm singing songs from the movement. She starts clapping her hands, and her honor guard, just a little sideways glance, like, we've never seen that before. And then she starts singing when I started in on this one. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who are these children dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the ones that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Said, wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who are these children dressed in black? God's gonna trouble the water. It must be the ones never turning back. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. I said, God's gonna trouble the water. I said, God's gonna trouble the water. The Queen's Regent was singing. She was standing before that one was done. After the performance, a very sweaty me was invited to go greet the Queen's Regent. I threw the jacket back on and tried, do all the things. And I'm trying to remember all the protocols that I've been schooled in, and I'm brought forward. She goes to extend the hand, and I go, okay, I can take her hand. And then she just pounces on me like Tigger and gives full, burly, sweaty me a big hug. I was like, what? And the honor guard is looking at me like, she was moved. I learned in conversation with her that her parents had gone to school in Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance. They sent her to go to school at Columbia in the 60s. In the late 50s and early 60s, she was a part of the civil rights movement in this country. It was her request that I sing these songs for the youth of Antigua and Barbuda, that they would hear the music that had fueled 2 generations of activism within her family and had fueled generations of engagement around the world. It was extraordinary. I did remember to back away properly, but I was overwhelmed by the experience because, as I asked our young folks before they left for RE, is music a universal language? And the answer is yes, it can be. Music can be a language that reaches beyond boundaries, reaches beyond cultural differences, reaches across generations, reaches across languages. Music is an extraordinary thing. You know what else is also extraordinary? A good potluck. We get to express cultural identity and things that we love in a good potluck. I was witness to a phenomenon that happened at a Unitarian church in New Jersey about 12 years ago, 15 years ago. There was one lone Republican member of the congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Church, who very much wanted to host a pig roast. This used to be a community church, and everybody who went to church there lived within walking distance for the most part. But as happens in so many places, white flight to the suburbs, many immigrants moved in from all over the world, and it became a commuter church. The people who were living in the neighborhood were going to the iglesia, or they were going to a church that was speaking Kenyan or Nigerian or various other languages. They were going to places where they felt at home, where the least remarkable thing about them on a Sunday morning was the color of their skin or the language they spoke. They chose to go to a place that felt like home to them, just as we come here because it feels like home to us. But he recognized the singular Republican Unitarian Universalist in their midst, that if they wanted to be a community church again, they needed to be diplomats. They needed to reach across the boundaries. And he said, let's have a pig roast. A pig roast is recognized in all of the cultures that are represented here, our Spanish-speaking neighbors, our Filipino neighbors, our African neighbors. They all recognize a pig roast as a sign of sharing abundance. You would not believe the uproar in the congregation about whether or not it was appropriate for congregational money to be spent on a pig in order to do this thing. And the vegetarians and the vegans and the human rights activists and the environmental activists, and the congregation just fractured into many, many pieces. And that was the weekend that Uncle Joe, spiritual Uncle Joe, was invited in to preach and sing. The minister was like, I got a weekend I don't know what to do with here. Whatever you do will be better than what I can do. Come in and sing. And I started to vibe this thing out. I was like, I'm not sure I have what it takes. And she's like, didn't you do a thing for the State Department? Problem with the internet, people can look you up. So I did some music and it was all good, but the interesting thing is that there was still contention in the community. The congregation ended up meeting him halfway. He paid for half of it himself. So thoroughly did he believe in it, and the congregation paid for half of the cost of this banquet. And people brought other dishes, but they had a pig roast, and they had solidly 70 or 80 people from the community who never would have otherwise set foot on the property of the Unitarian Universalist Church come forward and hang out and greet each other and meet each other and get to know each other's stories and hear each other's songs. It was an extraordinary thing to witness. And it almost didn't happen because people were stuck on political correctness and stuck in their ideology in a way that prevented them from being neighbors. When I talk about diplomacy being a thing that is not just the work of trained diplomats and heads of state, but a thing that we all have an invitation to participate in, this is what I mean. Sometimes we have to be willing to meet people where they're at, even if it makes us uncomfortable. We have to risk being neighborly, even toward people whose ideals or whose values or whose stated political purpose might be different than our own. We will not fix the problems in the world by choosing to entrench so thoroughly that it prevents us from seeing another as fully human, even if we are vegan and their ideal meal is a roast pig. That's the way it goes sometimes. So I was done visiting with the Queens region. I was on to the radio station the next day, and I played some of my songs and some of the songs from the civil rights movement and labor movement in the US. And the DJ says something that floors me. He says, "You are quite the patriot." This is not a word that is hurled at me very often. And I said, well, I'm curious, what about the music I've sung that makes you say that? He says, oh, you're singing about the power and the beauty of the people. You're singing about why the people matter. The people make the country, and that makes you a patriot. Okay, if that's what it means, I'll claim that. Sure, that's a whole good thing. It's a whole other thing. On we go to Barbados, on we go to a couple other countries. I land in Grenada, and I walk into the embassy. Any place where we have a diplomatic presence, but we don't have an ambassador, the charge d'affaires is the highest ranking post there, the person in charge. It sounds more important when you say it in French, charge d'affaires. Those who know the charge just say, oh, the charge. You know, you're in the inner circle if you're informal enough to refer to that person as the charge. I walk in to greet the charge d'affaires, and there is a 7-foot portrait of Barack Obama on the wall, smiling, beaming back at me. And there's the flag. And I look at the flag of Grenada, the flag of the U.S. State Department, the flag of the U.S., and maybe for the first time in my life, I place my hand over my heart and hold it there for a minute, not out of obligation, but out of a deep sense of appreciation. I asked the charge about, so what happened here? We had kind of an odd history with Grenada. He says, yeah, I'd love to get you connected to some of the abuelas. I'd love to get you connected to some of the older people here because they could tell you the story better than I could. And by the way, is there anything that you want to learn about? I said, yeah, we passed something that said Labor Temple. I want to know about that building. And he said, I've only been here 6 months. I haven't had time to reach out to the labor community here, but I think, sure, let's set up an appointment. Let's make it happen while you're in town, because you, with all your labor songs, can reach across this chasm maybe differently than I could. And so we met with some of the labor leaders and some of the community, women and men alike. I met the man who was the first cousin of the deposed and then assassinated socialist leader of Grenada. There were a whole bunch of young people that went to schools in the Caribbean, sponsored by the Soviets, that went to schools in Africa and in the Soviet Union, sponsored by the Soviets, learning science, learning medicine, learning civil engineering, bridge building, quite literally. And they came back to Grenada, and they were tired of the status quo, because Grenada went from being a colony to being a nation that was run by just as much nepotism, ostensibly under independence. And the young people engaged in what was, at first, a bloodless revolution. They put forth in their iteration of a parliament that they would have democratic elections, they would have votes, they would run the process and see what the country as a whole wanted. This is a country, mind you, that has a population roughly equal to Evanston, Illinois. At the time, about 120,000 people. But they wanted to determine their own fate, their own future. And they voted democratically for a socialist government that was led largely by people in their 20s and early 30s. It was a hopeful time in Grenada. But within a year, more criminal elements had discovered that if you could sway the people so easily, that they would just take over to make money. And the top 26 governmentally recognized officials in the Grenadian government were assassinated. And then they ended up in a civil war that was literally family member against family member, and that's when the United States got involved. There's a side of a building down the road from the embassy that has the U.S. flag painted on it. It's a black background with the U.S. flag painted on it, and it says, "Thank you, USA." And I asked this greeting of labor officials, I said, "What's that about?" And the older gentleman, that first cousin of the assassinated leader, said, "The women paint that. Every time somebody tries to deface it, they go back out with their paint and they put that back up on the side of the building. They want people to remember what happened. They want people to remember a time when our young people were at war with each other over ideology and failing to recognize that seeing each other fully as human beings was more important than political ideology." And so they go out with no ideology other than love for their grandchildren, and they keep repainting that flag every time somebody defaces it. And then he looked at me after I'd played some labor songs and up with the people, and, you know, and he says, your country did us a favor, you know. When you entered this country, when your country came to our country, it was not an invasion. Your president at the time, Reagan, searched low and high to find anyone who had still constitutional authority in Grenada. And he found, I think, what would have been the equivalent of the Undersecretary of Agriculture, who was hiding out in Barbados. And he flew to Washington and besieged our government for a peacekeeping force that would disarm the Civil War. And given constitutional credence, then finally Reagan was willing to go in. Barbados had been asking the US government to get involved for more than a year. And they said, we have no constitutional authority. We can't just invade a sovereign nation because they're having a civil war. But then they had an invitation. They came in, and in 6 weeks, they disarmed the Civil War. They took care of it. And the man looked up at me, and he said, I think this was very brave of him. Mr. Bishop said to me, your country would do well to learn a lesson from this. You came to our country as peacekeepers. You solved the problem, and you left 6 weeks later. Perhaps there are other places in the world it's time to leave. That's all he said, but it was a pretty powerful moment. And then it was off to the TV studio, because the Minister of Culture, which near as I can tell is like the head of the NEA and the FCC rolled into one position. Again, country at that time of 110,000 people. We're on air, me in that wool suit under old school carbon arc lights, not these nice little LEDs you got going on in here. No. Kicking out the BTUs in the summer in a TV studio. But when he left acting as a profession and agreed to come be the Minister of Culture, he said, I want to do a show once a week where I get to celebrate the culture of Grenada and visiting artists. That was his deal. So he had the TV show, and we're there. It's the Minister of Culture and the Charge d'Affaires here, and me on the end with my guitar. And I played one song that he found particularly provocative, and he turns to the Charge d'Affaires and says, you know, why would the United States bring somebody like this as a representative here to Grenada? And the Charge, in true diplomatic form, says, Minister, that's an excellent question. I'd like to let Mr. Jenks answer that. Thanks. I had a moment remembering how I felt walking into the embassy and seeing a president I was proud of. Seeing a flag that carried different meaning for me than it had in the past. And I looked at the minister and I said, Minister, Grenada is a beautiful, growing, and thriving country that is barely 35 years old. I think if my country wanted to send a message to your country, part of the reason I'm here is to remind Grenada that no democracy can exist without the minority opinion being represented. Civil dialogue is not just between people who agree with each other. It happens most poignantly and with the greatest effect when people who disagree with each other find a pathway into dialogue. I think the lesson my country is trying to offer Grenada is that the voice of dissent, the voice of resistance, the voice of the people, as it may express in many different ways, must be a part of the conversation for democracy to thrive. And then I went on to my next song. And then the charge took me out to lunch. And as we're waiting for our food to arrive, he looks up at me and he says, have you ever thought about taking your foreign service exam? I said, no, actually. In the multitude of things I had considered, including ministry and music education, it never occurred to me to take a foreign service exam. Why? He said, because I can teach people foreign policy. I can't teach people how to do what you just did. I can't teach people how to do that. My invitation to you, to all of you, is even in those moments when you are uncomfortable, as you are able. Remember that you are uniquely qualified, being part of this liberal religious tradition, already being more comfortable with a multitude of pluralisms and diversity. You are uniquely qualified to enter the world in this time and reach your hand across the distance to other people. You have more skill sets. You see things differently. You are not entrenched in such a precise ideology that it prevents you from seeing a human being in front of you, a person in need, a person for whom you might be of service. We have the blessing in our tradition of a unique celebration of diversity. And I think we're all invited in this time to think about how we can use that ability, use that as a strength, to embrace a kind of diversity that causes us anxiety, but to meet people where they are and invite them into a different place, to show up with the pig roast, to show up with the instruments, to show up with the art project, to show up with the community cleanup project where everybody's out picking up trash on a Saturday morning, to show up in whatever way you can in the community, to be present with people, because that level of diplomacy is the thing that makes a difference. That level of diplomacy, it's what begins someone saying, well, I don't particularly care for, well, present company accepted, of course. I mean, sometimes that can be seen as a pejorative statement. But in the beginning, you've just gotten them to recognize one person as not being what they expect out of a liberal, out of a Unitarian Universalist, out of somebody who embraces pluralism and diversity. You have become the exception to the rule. And if there's room for one exception, there's room for two. If there's room for two, there's room for 5 exceptions. If there's room for 5 exceptions to the rule of their ideology, then it begins to change. Then it's more exceptions than people who meet the rule. And suddenly, they have a whole new circle of friends they didn't know they would have. And so do we. I wrote this song this last spring, but it feels appropriate to the moment. It's called The Bells of Freedom. I would also like to say, lest it be confused, I am not suggesting that any of us become an apologist for unconscionable behavior. The only invitation is to recognize that we can challenge behaviors that are destructive and still choose to see others as fully human, even if they do not see us as fully human. Eventually, the power of that level of dignity has an impact. And we know it does because we can look in the rearview mirror and see times in history when people have done just that. The Bells of Freedom.
Father, you told the story well, how your country called on you, then sent you into hell. Of all the good people who were fighting by your side, just to keep the bells of freedom ringing. Sister, my dear sister, I know you see the light. Singing bread and roses, you keep vigil through the night. With one hand on the cradle, one hand holds the picket sign, as you strain to hear the bells of freedom ringing. Mother, my dear mother, you have spent your years elevating others, though sometimes through your tears. You've given all you have to give to help so many rise, that they might hear the bells of freedom ringing. Brother, my dear brother, do you think you were left out? Do you think now the shrine of liberty, in which so many died, 'cause it never heard the bells of freedom ring. Now the fox is in the hen house, others prowl around the door, the vultures circle round to claim what they could not reach before. They will not be contented till there's nothing left but bones, and they never heard the bells of freedom ringing. Oh country, my dear country, look at what we've done. That we presided over the setting of the sun. For all the rights that we have gained, will hope return again? Will we still hear the bells of freedom ringing? So stand up and be counted, do not accept this fate. The future will belong to those who do not hesitate to speak up for the innocent. Hear Lady Justice call, for she will keep the bells of freedom ringing. There's a time, I pray it's soon, when we will turn the tide. We'll turn away from hatred, and we'll forsake our pride. We'll build a different future, a story yet untold. We will keep the bells of freedom ringing. Yes, we will see the people rise and don't know how or when. We will find a way to ring that freedom bell again. And all of you who truly see a stranger as a friend will give it all to keep the bells of freedom ringing. So bring to me your immigrants, bring to me your friends, bring to me the laborers whose toil never ends. Bring to me the children still bold enough to dream, for they will hear the bells of freedom ringing. Yes, bring to me all those who dare to dream and dream again. We will keep the bells of freedom ringing. We will keep the bells of freedom ringing.
Nearly each week, we include an opportunity to engage in the spiritual practice of generosity to support and sustain this congregation. The slide is sharing details on different ways you can make a contribution. You can contribute via text, following the information on the slide, or write a check to UUSS, or by placing cash in the offering basket. If you are making a pledge payment, please be sure to put that in the memo. Your donation will make a difference and will be gratefully received. Our gifted guest, Joe Jenks, will be playing an original piece, All Will Be Well. Let us now give and receive the offering.
All will be well, all will be well, all manner of things will be well. Wherever life may call you, wherever you may dwell, all will be well, all will be well. We gather here to witness and affirm the harmony of spirit and heart. made well. All will be well, all will be well. You find your purpose in service to a light that emanates from each and every being that is alive. We see the gifts that blossom in your care, and the people who are nourished by your love. All will be well. All will be well. All manner of things will be well, wherever life may call you. Wherever life may call you, wherever you may dwell. All will be well, all will be well. As you go forth to mend what has been broken, to feed those who are hungry, to quench the ones who thirst, for a world of compassion, for mercy that abounds, and a place to dwell in sacred gentleness. All will be well. All will be well. All will be well. All manner of things will be well. Wherever life may call you, wherever you may dwell, all will be well. All will be well, all will be well. One more time, all will be well. All will be well. All manner of things will be well. Wherever life may call you, wherever you may dwell, all will be well, all will be well. All will be well, all will be well. With the gifts that we give, we offer our gratitude. Our gratitude for a healthy community, a welcoming community. We offer our gratitude for the safe haven of this sanctuary. We offer gratitude as we become more and more mindful of what the word sanctuary means. And we offer gratitude as we aspire to be the kind of people who enter the world capable of offering sanctuary to others. We manifest our gifts so that we might give them. Ships were not made for the harbor. And so we offer, in the spirit of prayer, the hope for courage, for equanimity, for a calm temper in the face of the storm. And we offer gratitude for the depth and breadth and diversity of community that holds us up and gives us the strength to go into the world every day. And we remember all will be well. Rabindranath Tagore was an extraordinary poet. He was the first lyricist to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature. He was the first non-European to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature, known as the poet of Bengal. These words that he wrote, I want to say around 1905. I could be wrong about that. I'm wrong about a great many things sometimes, but the internet will make all clear. Where the Mind is Free, by Rabindranath Tagore. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms toward perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake.
As you are comfortable, willing, able, please rise. If staying seated is what works for you, that's great, but I'd love to have you sing one more piece with me. And I always find that I sing better when I'm standing up. Come with me. I wrote this song after nearly drowning in the Klamath River in Northern California. I wrote it for the lifeguard, actually. I used to be a Red Cross certified lifeguard. Fancied myself to be a good swimmer. And I lit out across a wide and fast-moving mountain river and failed to recognize that that sense of self of being a good swimmer was solidly 10 years out of date. There I am, 3/4 of the way across the river, hitting an outside bend, the fastest moving, deepest part of the river, and my shoulders freeze and I can't lift my arms, and I start to bob in the water and suck water into the top of my lungs a little bit. I begin to panic, which doesn't help anything at all. And I remember people saying, you know, like, look for the light, and I look for the light, and I can see sunlight through about a foot of river water and foam, and I keep waiting for some mystical call, and then I'm like, oh, that's right, God knows I'm a Unitarian. That's probably not the right. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe it'll be like in the movies where there's this flash of imagery that, you know, somehow my whole life suddenly makes sense. And the reason why this is the end of it also makes sense. Like it's all somehow just this mystical understanding. That didn't happen either. I was now experiencing an existential struggle alongside, you know, also drowning, you know. Time accordioned outward, minutes worth of thought process are happening in seconds. And then I had it. I had that vision in the river, like times of old, like reading Hebrew scripture, you know, and the songs that we sing in the civil rights movement and crossing the River Jordan, and the perilous nature of the journey. Suddenly I have the vision, and it's the headline that will appear the next day in the Arcata newspaper that says, "Obscure folk singer dies in freak river accident." I thought, I don't think this is how I want this story to end. And it literally, you know, I mean, seriously, if it was ego that got me into this, it was ego going to get me back out. And I, with my last breath, pushed my head above the surface of the water and cried out for help. And to my eternal benefit, there was a woman on a retreat that week who was a current Red Cross certified lifeguard. She hopped in the water with me, but she didn't do any of the things I expected her to do. The underarm, you know, drag me back to shore with a side swim or whatever. No, she just told me to take a deep breath. Try one of those with me. Lots of air to go around here. And she told me to take another breath and another breath. And she just sat there treading water and had me place my hands on her shoulders. She held me up in that torrent as we were floating downstream. And she just had me keep breathing, until she separated me from my panic and reconnected me to my breath. Then she said, okay, let's keep swimming. I was like, I thought you were here to save me. She's like, I just did, let's go, you know. I mean, this is what it looks like. This is why we gather in beloved community, because we join each other in that great river, and we hold space for each other, and we allow each other to take those deep breaths that we so genuinely need to get back to our lives. So, thank you for taking time to be here this morning with each other. Thank you for letting me share music and story with you. Please join me in singing this closing hymn, although you don't know it yet, you will shortly.
I feel the current raging around me, try to summon up my strength once more. I am weary on this journey, afraid I will not reach that distant shore. I cried for help, feel
Lord, for a Son benediction. In offering gratitude, I would like to thank our tech team at the back, Mike and Randy and Jensen and Christine. I'd also like to thank our worship team here, Maria and Jeff and Miss Stephanie. A true privilege to be here with you today. I wish you peace and every blessing on your journey as you learn to cherish each and every day. May your tears be those of healing. May your laughter bring you joy, and may true love be your companion all the way. I wish you peace. I wish you peace. Every blessing on your journey as you learn to cherish each and every day. To cherish each and every day. May your tears be those of healing. May your laughter bring you joy. May true love be your companion all the way. One more time, I wish you peace. I wish you peace. Every blessing on your journey as you learn to cherish each and every day. May your tears be those of